Today, we look at the main functions of the financial model. You will experience that the model is a useful tool to analyze the project and how we use it to improve the project and its financing. In this video, I'll talk you through the model, and after that, verified participants will be invited to download a sample model and play with it themselves. They can experience firsthand what possibilities it brings for the case study product. The primary purpose of the model is to confirm the financial viability of the project for the investors and the project lenders. In week 1, we saw that the financial viability is driven by financial analysis, the analysis of the expected cash flows, using the NPV, the IRR, and the DSCR calculations. An additional purpose of the model is that it enables stakeholders to analyze the impact of a change that could happen in the project. This is called sensitivity analysis, determining how sensitive the cash flows are to specific changes. Such an analysis is important to determine the feasibility of the project, but also as a tool in the process of risk assessment and risk allocation. And finally, because it is also a useful tool in contract negotiations. Thanks to this analysis, we can determine what aspects are the most important for us to achieve in our commercial negotiations. Risks with the largest financial impact are most important to manage carefully. The model generates the data we need for this assessment. That information helps us to focus the project management on those most critical issues. In order to do all this, the model needs to generate accurate outputs. These are the cash flow predictions. And the model analyzes these cash flows. It needs to calculate the expected NPV, IRR, and DSCR ratios to determine if these are good enough to draw in the funding that we need. The model needs to be given inputs that are required to calculate these cash flows. These inputs will drive the outputs. Getting inputs wrong will affect the financial analysis. It's therefore important to log carefully the source of the inputs that we use in the model. In large projects, this is often done in an assumptions book. This is a book that records all the assumptions and the sources that they originate from. The model will be used and reviewed by many different people, often people with different educational backgrounds. That's why a good model needs to have a clear and understandable architecture. Important aspects of this architecture are that all the input assumptions are recorded together. They shouldn't be scattered out throughout the model, and the source of these assumptions should also be identified. Verified participants can download a model in our case study, and they can see what typical inputs are. Then there's a cash flow section in the model which calculates the expected cash flows. These cash flows must be generated correctly and posted in the period that they are expected to occur. There is usually a loan section in the model that summarizes the development of the project loans, when they come in, how much interest accrues in a period, when that interest is paid, and when the loan principal is repaid. The loan section is used to calculate the debt service cash flows. These are the interest and the loan repayments. These can be compared to the cash flows available for debt service or the CADS. The ratio between these two will generate the DSCR. A good model will have a dashboard which summarizes the most important inputs and shows immediately the key outputs, particularly the project NPV, IRR, and DSCR. The dashboard is a key tool that can be used for sensitivity analysis. We saw that the model calculates these ratios, the NPV, the IRR, and the DSCR, and these can be complex calculations, but they are Excel macros that can help you here. You will find those macros in the case model that you can download. We need to remember that we are using cash flow forecasts to determine how much to fund today. Once we borrow, we have a real debt service obligation, it will be extremely important to have a high degree of certainty that the net cash flows will indeed not be lower than in our forecast. This comes down to analysing in detail the sensitivity to risks that could occur. Risks that increase the cost or reduce the income. The model enables stakeholders to analyse the impact of changes. The dashboard is a useful tool for that. It contains those inputs that we want to analyse. The dashboard enables changes of each input. For example, we could run a scenario that the construction costs increase by 10%, or that the completion period is delayed by 6 months. We can then either change the construction cost input in the model or the completion date in that same model. The model then recalculates the cash flows and shows the resulting changes to these cash flows. In that way, the model tells us exactly what the financial consequences of the changes will be. This helps us to focus our attention on the key risk areas, and it also gives comfort to the lending banks that we've done our homework. The model will tell us when a change is so critical that our NPV falls to zero, or when we threaten to fall below the minimum DSCR threshold. That would create problems with our banks. If so, we need to manage these risks extra carefully to avoid that they happen. For example, by entering into turnkey contracts or offtake agreements. Lenders and investors will probably want to receive a copy of the project model very early on to decide whether it's worth putting in the time to examine your project proposal. That model will tell them exactly how attractive the project is through these ratios, and it will show what the biggest risks are. If we can show that we have ruled out risky situations occurring, for example, because we've entered into an offtake agreement that fixes our revenues, then they will be more likely to lend to our project. We usually see that the model also becomes a part of the closing documentation. That way, all the project stakeholders have a universal tool. They can assess the ongoing financial status of the project through model updates, and also the impact of any changes to the assumptions. There are no further videos in this week. For verified participants, let's get down to business. Let's analyse the case study using the case model. We'll take you through the case in several steps that will give you insights that you need.